The evening air was warm and gentle as Parker Matthews walked through the tree-lined streets of downtown Charleston with his 7-year-old daughter, Sophie. It had been their tradition for years now, these Thursday evening walks to get ice cream after her piano lessons. Sophie held his hand tightly, chattering about her day at school, her friend Emma's birthday party, and the new song her teacher wanted her to learn. Parker listened with the half-attention of a busy man, nodding at the right moments while his mind drifted to tomorrow's board meeting, the quarterly reports waiting on his desk, and the merger that could expand Matthews' financial group into 3 new states. At 43, he built something remarkable from the ground up, and it required constant vigilance to maintain. "Daddy, look." Sophie tugged his hand, pointing to a colorful ice cream cart parked near the corner, its striped umbrella glowing under the streetlights. "Can we get some?" "Of course, Princess," Parker said, pulling out his wallet as they approached. That's when he noticed her. A little girl, maybe 5 years old, standing a few feet away from the cart. She wore a faded pink dress that had clearly been washed too many times, and her blonde hair was pulled back in a simple ponytail. She watched the other children with their ice cream cones with an expression that wasn't quite longing, but something deeper, resignation, perhaps, the look of a child who had learned not to hope for things she couldn't have. Parker ordered Sophie's usual strawberry cone, and his daughter accepted it with a bright smile. As they turned to leave, the little girl suddenly stepped forward, not toward Parker, but toward Sophie. "That looks really good," the girl said softly, her voice carrying a maturity that didn't match her small frame. Sophie, with the generous heart of the well-loved, immediately offered her cone. "Do you want to try it?" The girl shook her head quickly. "No, thank you. I was just saying it looks nice." Parker found himself studying the child more closely. Her clothes were clean but worn. Her shoes were slightly too small, the toes pressing against the canvas. But it was her eyes that struck him, old eyes in a young face, eyes that had seen more than they should have. "Would you like your own cone?" Parker asked gently. "My treat." The girl looked up at him, and for a moment he thought she might accept. Then she shook her head again. "No, thank you, sir. I don't need anything." Something about the way she said it, with such dignity and such careful politeness, touched Parker in a way he hadn't expected. Before he could respond, a woman approached, and Parker immediately understood. The woman was young, probably in her late 20s, with the same blonde hair as the girl. She wore jeans and a simple white t-shirt, and she moved with the exhausted grace of someone who had worked a long shift on her feet. "Lily," the woman said softly. "I told you to stay by the bench." "I'm sorry, Mama," the girl said. "I just wanted to see the pretty cart." The woman noticed Parker and Sophie, and her expression shifted to cautious politeness. "I'm sorry if she bothered you." "Not at all," Parker said quickly. "I was just offering to buy her an ice cream." "That's very kind," the woman said. "But we're fine. Come on, Lily." Parker watched them start to walk away, the little girl's hand in her mother's, and he felt something shift in his chest. Sophie tugged on his sleeve. "Daddy, why doesn't she have ice cream?" "I don't know, sweetheart," Parker said honestly. "Can we give her money so she can buy some?" Parker looked at his daughter, at her innocent concern, and then back at the woman and child walking away. On impulse, he called out, "Excuse me." "Wait, please." The woman turned, weariness in her eyes. Parker approached slowly, pulling out his wallet. "I'm sorry. I don't mean to intrude, but my daughter and I would really like to buy you both ice cream, please. It would make Sophie happy." The woman looked at him for a long moment, clearly weighing pride against practicality. The little girl, Lily, looked up at her mother with hopeful eyes. "Please, Mama," she whispered. The woman's resistance crumbled. "All right. Thank you. That's very kind." They returned to the cart, and Parker bought cones for both Lily and her mother. He watched Lily's face transform as she tasted her chocolate ice cream, pure joy replacing that too-old expression. "I'm Parker," he said, extending his hand to the woman. "And this is Sophie." Claire, the woman replied, shaking his hand briefly. And this is Lily. Hi, Lily. Sophie said brightly. I'm 7. How old are you? 5.5, Lily said, with the precision of young children who count half years as full accomplishments. They stood there for a few moments, an awkward group of 4 strangers connected by ice cream cones. Parker found himself not wanting to walk away, though he couldn't quite explain why. Do you live nearby? He asked Claire, trying to sound casual rather than intrusive. We're staying at the Morrison Street shelter, Claire said, lifting her chin slightly, as if daring him to judge her. I'm working to save enough for a deposit on an apartment. Parker nodded, keeping his expression neutral. What kind of work do you do? Whatever I can find, Claire said. Right now, I'm waitressing at the diner on 5th Street. Morning shifts. Lily comes with me sometimes and does her coloring books in the back booth. Sophie, oblivious to the weight of the adult conversation, had begun talking to Lily about school, books, and favorite colors. The 2 girls sat down on a nearby bench, and Parker gestured to another bench a few feet away. May I? He asked Claire. She hesitated, then nodded. They sat watching their daughters interact. I don't usually accept charity, Claire said quietly. But Lily, she so rarely asks for anything. When she wanted to see the ice cream cart, I couldn't bring myself to pull her away. It's not charity, Parker said. It's just ice cream. Claire smiled slightly, a sad smile. To you, maybe. To us, it's more than that. They sat in silence for a moment, and Parker found himself asking, if you don't mind my asking, how did you end up at the shelter? Claire was quiet for so long that Parker thought she might not answer. Then she spoke, her voice steady but soft. My husband died 18 months ago. Heart attack. He was only 32. We didn't have much savings, and I didn't have life insurance on him because we couldn't afford it. I was working part-time as a dental assistant, but after he died, I couldn't keep up with the rent on my own. We bounced around staying with friends, but I didn't want to overstay our welcome anywhere. The shelter, it's temporary. Just until I can get enough together for the first month's rent and deposit. I'm sorry, Parker said, meaning it. Thank you, Claire replied. We're managing. Lily is strong. She doesn't complain. Parker looked over at the little girl, who was laughing at something Sophie had said. She seems like a wonderful child. She is, Claire said, and the love in her voice was unmistakable. She's everything to me. They talked for a while longer, and Parker learned more. Claire had been studying to be a teacher before she got married and had Lily. She'd put her dreams on hold to help support her husband while he tried to start his own business. After he died, she'd tried to go back to school but couldn't manage it financially while working full-time and caring for Lily. As the evening grew later, Parker felt an unfamiliar reluctance to say goodbye. Listen, he said carefully. My company is always looking for good people. If you're interested, I could help you find something more stable than restaurant work. Better hours, better pay, benefits. Claire looked at him with a mixture of hope and suspicion. Why would you do that? Parker considered the question. Because I can, he said simply. And because your daughter deserves to have a home, and you deserve a chance to get back on your feet. I don't want a handout, Claire said firmly. I'm not offering one, Parker replied. I'm offering a job. You'd have to work for it, same as anyone else. But I can at least make sure you get a fair shot at an interview. Claire studied his face, searching for the catch. What's your company? Matthews Financial Group, Parker said. We have positions in various departments. With your background, you might be good in client relations or administrative support. Claire's eyes widened slightly. You're that Parker Matthews? The CEO? I am, he admitted. She shook her head slowly. I don't understand. Why are you doing this for complete strangers? Parker looked over at Sophie and Lily, who were now standing by the ice cream cart, comparing the colors of their dresses. Honestly, I'm not entirely sure. But something about meeting you and Lily, it reminded me of something I've forgotten lately. That life is more than quarterly reports and profit margins. That sometimes, the most important thing we can do is help someone who needs it. The next week, Claire came in for an interview. Impressing the department head with her determination and sharp mind, she got a position in client relations on her own merit. Parker helped her find a small, clean apartment near Sophie's school, arranging a small advance for the deposit. Within weeks, Claire and Lily moved out of the shelter. The transition was fast, but the impact was instant. The two girls became inseparable, and Claire's exhausted look slowly replaced itself with a quiet, confident glow. From that evening on, their conversations no longer ended when the workday did. Sometimes they found themselves laughing over coffee in the break room, sharing stories about Sophie and Lily, discovering pieces of each other's lives they had never expected to reveal. As the months passed, Claire's new job brought her into Parker's world, and their lives began to intertwine in ways neither expected. It started with small, quiet moments that went beyond employer and employee. One rainy Friday evening, Parker stayed late to help Claire pack up some heavy client files. As they worked side by side in the quiet office, Claire accidentally knocked over a cup of pens. As they both reached down to pick them up, their hands brushed. Parker looked up to find Claire watching him, her eyes soft with a vulnerability he hadn't seen before. "I forgot what it felt like," she whispered, "to not feel entirely alone in the world." Parker smiled, gently wrapping his hand over hers. "You aren't alone anymore, Claire." A few weeks later, Lily fell ill with a sudden high fever while Claire was in the middle of a major client presentation. Unable to leave her post, Claire was panic-stricken, until Parker stepped in without hesitation. He drove to the school, picked Lily up, and sat with her in the pediatrician's waiting room, holding her hand and reading her favorite coloring books until Claire arrived, breathless and tearful. As Claire rushed to her daughter's side, Lily smiled weakly and whispered, "Mama. Mr. Parker stayed with me the whole time. He didn't let me be scared." Seeing the powerful, wealthy CEO sitting on a tiny plastic chair, gently pressing a cool damp cloth to Lily's forehead, something shifted deeply in Claire's heart. It wasn't about the money he had, or the job he'd given her. It was the fact that he was there. He was present. One afternoon, about 6 months after their first meeting, Parker was walking through the office lobby when he saw Lily sitting in one of the chairs, coloring quietly while she waited for her mother. On impulse, he sat down next to her. "Hi, Mr. Parker," she said, looking up with a smile. "Hi, Lily. What are you drawing?" "A house," she said, showing him a picture of a yellow house with a red door and flowers in front. "It's our new home." "It's beautiful," Parker said. Lily set down her crayons and looked at him with those old young eyes. "Mr. Parker, can I tell you something?" "Of course. When you first talked to me and Mama by the ice cream cart, I was scared you were going to give us money." Parker was surprised. "Scared? Why?" "Because people give us money sometimes, and they always look at us like we're sad or broken, like they feel sorry for us." She paused, choosing her words carefully. "But you didn't look at us like that. You looked at us like we were regular people." Parker felt his throat tighten. "You are regular people, Lily." "I know," she said simply. "But not everyone sees that." She went back to her coloring, and Parker sat there processing her words. This child, barely 6 years old, had articulated something he'd been feeling but couldn't quite name. A few minutes later, Sophie bounded into the lobby with Claire. The two girls embraced like they'd been apart for days rather than hours. Parker stood, and Claire smiled at him, a smile that now held a warmth that made his heart skip. "Thanks for keeping an eye on her." "My pleasure," Parker said. He watched Sophie hug Lily goodbye, witnessing the easy affection between them. Suddenly, Lily turned to him. "Mr. Parker," she said softly. "Yes, Lily? Can I give you a hug, too? Like Sophie gives you?" Parker felt something crack in his chest. He knelt down, and Lily walked over, wrapping her small arms around his neck. She held on tight, and he realized she wasn't just hugging him, she was clinging to him, as if he represented something she'd been desperately missing. When she finally pulled back, there were tears in her eyes. "Thank you," she whispered. "Not for the job, not for the apartment. Thank you for the hug. I haven't had a daddy hug in so long." Parker couldn't speak. He just held her again, and over her shoulder, he saw Claire crying silently, her hand over her mouth. Sophie, with the emotional intelligence of a well-loved child, wrapped her arms around both of them. "You can share my daddy," she said matter-of-factly. "He gives really good hugs, and he has plenty extra." That night, after Sophie had gone to bed, Parker sat in his study thinking about Lily's words. "I don't need money. I just need a hug like your daughter gets." He'd spent years building an empire, accumulating wealth, and achieving success by every conventional measure. But a 5-year-old girl had reminded him that the most valuable things, love, connection, the simple comfort of being held, couldn't be bought or sold. He thought about his own childhood, about his father, who had been physically present but never really there. Always working, always chasing the next deal. Parker had sworn he'd be different with Sophie, but lately, he'd felt himself slipping into those same patterns, work consuming more time, distraction during their walks, his mind always somewhere else. Lily had given him a gift. She'd reminded him of what truly mattered. And in doing so, she'd helped him see that he'd been offered a second chance, not just to help Claire and Lily, but to be the father Sophie deserved and the man he'd always wanted to be. Over the following months, Parker found himself spending more time with Claire and Lily. What had started as a charitable impulse had evolved into a genuine friendship. Claire was intelligent, resilient, and possessed a quiet strength that Parker deeply admired. And Lily had a wisdom and gentleness that touched his heart. Sophie was thrilled to have Lily in her life, treating her like the sister she'd always wanted. And slowly, carefully, something deeper began to develop between Parker and Claire. One evening, nearly a year after their first meeting by the ice cream cart, Parker invited Claire to dinner, just the two of them, while Sophie and Lily had a sleepover at his house, with his housekeeper keeping watch. "Claire," he said over coffee and dessert, "I need to tell you something. And I want you to know that regardless of your response, it won't affect your job, our friendship, or anything else. You and Lily will always have my support, no matter what." Claire looked nervous. "Okay. I've fallen in love with you," Parker said simply. "With your strength, your grace, and your incredible heart. With the way you've rebuilt your life from nothing, and the mother you are to Lily. And I've fallen in love with your daughter, too. She's an extraordinary child." Claire's eyes filled with tears. "Parker, I don't know what to say." "You don't have to say anything right now," he assured her. "I just needed you to know. I understand if it's too soon, or if you're not ready, or if you just don't feel the same way. But I couldn't keep it to myself anymore." Claire reached across the table and took his hand. "Do you remember what Lily said to you about the hug?" Parker nodded. "She told me later that night that you felt like her daddy used to feel, safe, strong, and warm." Claire's tears spilled over. "I've been so scared to let myself feel anything for you, Parker. Scared that I was just grateful, or that you were rescuing us, or that it wasn't real. But after seeing you hold Lily when she was sick, seeing how you truly care for us, I know it is real. I love you. I think I've loved you since that first night when you bought us ice cream and didn't make me feel ashamed for needing help." They were married the following spring in a simple ceremony in Parker's garden. Sophie was the flower girl, taking her role very seriously, and Lily stood beside her new mother, holding a bouquet that was almost as big as she was. When it came time for the vows, Parker looked at Claire and then at Lily, adding something that wasn't in the traditional ceremony. "Lily," he said, "I promise to be the father you deserve. To give you hugs whenever you need them, and to make you feel safe, loved, and valued every single day, if you'll let me." Lily, now 6 years old and still wise beyond her years, nodded solemnly. "I will." Thank you for choosing us, Mr. Parker. Just Parker now, he said gently. Or Dad, if you'd like. Dad, Lily said, trying the word out. Then, with more confidence, Dad. Later, during the reception, when someone asked Parker how he'd met his bride, he told them the truth. A little girl taught me that the most valuable thing we can give each other isn't money, success, or prestige. It's connection. It's presence. It's love freely given. She asked me for a hug, and in return, she gave me a family and reminded me what really matters in life. Because sometimes, the greatest teachers come in the smallest packages. Sometimes wisdom speaks with a child's voice, and sometimes a simple request for a hug can change everything, reminding us that at the end of the day, we all need the same things: to be seen, to be valued, to be held, and to be loved. Money could buy comfort and security, but it couldn't buy the feeling of a child's arms around your neck, trusting you completely. It couldn't buy the look in your daughter's eyes when she knew you were truly present. It couldn't buy the peace that came from knowing you were building something that mattered, not a company or a fortune, but a family. That's what Lily had taught him that warm evening by the ice cream cart. That's what she'd given him when she'd asked for something priceless. Not money, just a hug. And in that simple request, she'd given him everything.